Hi, guys. Thank you so much for watching. So I want to address the Trump campaign refusing to concede and say, Joe Biden, okay, fine, you're president-elect, and all of the lawsuits that's happening with the Trump campaign. I want to talk about that for a little bit. The first thing I want to say is the election isn't over until the electors sing. That is just the way it goes. The election is not over until they go, the Electoral College, until they go and they cast their votes in front of Congress. That has to happen, and that happens in January. And I want to remind you that back in 2016, people also agreed that the election wasn't over until that point, because many people who were very shocked, myself included at that time, very shocked that Donald Trump won, were actually calling for, if you remember this, the Electoral College to do the American thing and change their votes, to go to the convention that they go to, cast their votes, and do so not for Donald Trump. There was this major push for this. They were saying, look, maybe we can come up with a compromise candidate. Okay, you don't like Hillary Clinton, but come on, you can't do Donald Trump. How about we give you Mitt Romney? Go for Mitt Romney. Let's do that. Let's do that instead. If you remember, there was that push. So back in 2016, people knew, and they were unwilling to accept the election results of Donald Trump winning. People knew that the process isn't over until the Electoral College actually casts their votes. So media doesn't get to call elections, even if they project, even if senators and even if Donald Trump were to concede, it's still not really over until the Electoral College casts their vote. So that's first thing. Secondly, it is within Donald Trump's right, absolutely, to challenge election results. It's within his right. He can do this. And I'm going to argue that it's not actually a bad thing. I actually think that this ultimately will result in something really good, which is a strengthening of our elections. Now, got to be honest with you, I think that there's about 12 different cases that have been challenged. You know, Trump has filed, I think, 12 different lawsuits in various states across the country. And thus far, none of them have ruled in his favor. They've either been thrown out or they just haven't been ruled on his behalf. And it's not, and even if they weren't ruled against him, even if they ruled for him, it's still not looking like it would make up the difference in votes necessary in order to change the outcome of the election. So I think everybody kind of needs to understand that even with these challenges, the outcome doesn't look like it's going to be any different. 2 points on that. First of all isn't this interesting that Democrats and liberals have been screaming for the last 4 years that our court system is packed with conservatives and is no longer trustworthy. They've essentially tried to get Americans to believe that the court system is not going to work on their behalf anymore because Republicans have been going around packing the courts. Interestingly, though, these very courts that they were demonizing and sowing mistrust in now are not actually siding with Trump. So what's that about? Well, what that is they were wrong in sowing that mistrust in the American public, that the courts are the courts. They operate independent of politics often, and they're doing their job. And in this case, they're doing their job in a way you like. So probably not a good idea to make the American public feel like the courts are not, really to question the integrity of the courts. I don't think that's a really good thing to do, and it's panning out to not be the case. Secondly, this is when elections are strengthened, is often in courts. I mean, if Congress or if legislators aren't going to make laws when they should be making laws, then it's the courts that end up interpreting and ruling that help strengthen and solidify certain aspects, right? So these challenges that Trump's bringing up are legitimate challenges, legitimate issues of cases of voter fraud. Now, maybe not widespread, but certainly cases, real cases, and real issues with our election system. And when they go to court and these judges rule on them, then that ultimately will mean that the elections in those states, for whatever the issue is, will be corrected and strengthened. That's a good thing. And strengthening our elections should not be that shouldn't be a partisan issue. That should be a bipartisan issue. We should all want to strengthen our elections. We should want this. So now saying, leave it alone, concede, give it up. That's not a good look. No, we should say, okay, fine, go to court. Ultimately, it's not going to change the outcome of the election, but it is your right as an American to do. It's one of the beauties of our system. It's that this is a wonderful thing that we're able to challenge election results in this country. Many people do not have that ability in their countries. So we should say, okay, go ahead. It's not going to change the outcome. And actually what it will do is ultimately maybe strengthen the election going forward for future elections. So Democrats and liberals should actually be celebrating this. Just step back for a minute. The people that typically scream about issues with our election integrity are usually Democrats. They're usually the ones who say there's voter suppression, there's fraud, there's gerrymandering, there's all of these issues with our election. And they're the ones usually challenging in court and calling for strengthening of our elections, calling for recounts, saying that there's some nefarious stuff that's been going on coming from the GOP. It's usually coming from the left that says, hey, we need to be paying attention to this. And usually the right wing says there's nothing wrong with our elections. There's nothing wrong with our elections. Leave it alone. We won. Screw you. Sorry about that. Sorry about your luck. So now this is coming from right-wing America, and we should be maybe saying, hey, welcome to the party. Thank you for realizing that our elections are not perfect. Thank you for realizing that we do need to do things to strengthen our elections and maybe rethink certain aspects of how elections are run. So welcome to the very issues we've been saying for a long time. And now maybe we can all work together to ensure a very smooth election process that is foolproof, at least as foolproof as it can be. So we shouldn't be discouraging this new kind of epiphany that's coming from right-wing America. And I also want to point out that now there have been numerous recounts. I think recounts are often automatically triggered if there's under a certain percentage. Runoffs are automatically triggered in certain cases, and recounts are automatically triggered in many other cases. But there have been 3 times in the last 20 years when an election recount has actually changed the outcome of an election. So it's not often, but it has happened. And it's happened 3 times in 20 years. And those 3 times, all 3 times, the election has shifted from a Republican who was announced as the winner to a Democrat being the actual winner. 3 times. It was a governor of Washington when, I don't remember her name, but the recount meant where this woman Democrat governor, so those of you who might remember, she was the one who ended up ultimately winning the election from that recount. I believe Al Franken also won his election on a recount. And then there was an auditor, a state auditor position. I don't remember where that also won on a recount. But again, it always went from Republican to Democrat. So challenging elections, saying we want to recount, saying we want to look into this, that is not something we should be discouraging. We should just say, okay, you're right. Let's see. Just to make sure that I won fair and square. That's what we should always be calling for. It shouldn't be, oh no, just drop it, give it up. It's no big deal. We won. Just accept it. Nobody has to accept it. And challenging it is normal and something that we should be doing, especially in cases of razor-thin elections. Now, I know that people want to try to. I've been seeing on TV these, on CNN and MSNBC, they're trying to paint it as not a razor-thin election because they're saying, well, 5 million more people voted for Joe Biden, but those 5 million people are here in California. California is always, overwhelmingly blue. Same thing with Washington and Oregon. The West Coast is overwhelmingly blue. And therefore, the rest of the country, if you notice even New York State, a lot of these different states are often close, as far as red and blue, pretty 50-50 or maybe, 60% or whatever. But in California, Washington, Oregon, it's overwhelmingly blue. So those, and California being the most populated state, of course, ends up being the one that carries all of this excess when it comes to the difference in the popular vote. So, they're saying, oh, no, it wasn't close. It was razor thin. This was a razor thin election in a lot of areas of the country. And I cannot blame anybody, either side. Whoever won, I knew whoever was going to win, the other side was going to be challenging this election. I think we could have, that was to be expected in a case like this, in an election like this, and with the intense emotions that have been going on surrounding this campaign and administration. As far as Americans not trusting the election process, I've got to be honest that there's a bit of hypocrisy that's going on. I'm seeing this with progressives in particular, where progressives have often questioned the election integrity in regards to Bernie Sanders in the primaries, in the Democratic primaries. And now all of a sudden, those same progressives are saying, oh, but there's nothing wrong with this election. No, it's all fine. And then when I say, isn't that a bit hypocritical? They say, no, because one is a Democratic primary run by the DNC and the other is the general election. So the general election, of course, is not, it wouldn't have the same issues as a DNC run primary. But the DNC doesn't actually run the primaries. The states do. And it's the same election body that runs the general election that runs the primaries. So if you think that there was a way for Democrats to rig elections against Bernie Sanders, even if it was just by a little bit, then you've got to remain consistent and think they might be able to do that same thing to Donald Trump. And furthermore, Americans watched for 4 years one side of the aisle attempt everything and anything in order to remove Donald Trump as president of the United States, from the Mueller investigation, Russia collusion, to an impeachment and beyond, many, many, many things. One side of the aisle sat and watched while the other side completely went into hysteria and did everything they possibly could to get rid of Donald Trump. So, of course, people are going to be like, maybe you cheated. Maybe how far are you willing to go? Maybe I don't know. And maybe it doesn't stop at cheating. So I think that's a legitimate feeling for many Americans to have after seeing what they saw for 4 years. I think that's very legitimate. And I think it's especially since one side of the aisle was calling the other side Nazis. I mean, if you think that half of America are going to usher in Nazism and the KKK, then you would also maybe think that it is within your moral right to do anything and everything, including cheat, to get rid of those people. That is not a stretch to think that. And so, of course, half of America, or many Americans, I should say, are wondering if there was something really sinister that went on, that maybe there was some cheating, that you just absolutely want this guy gone. And it's beyond just politics. It's an existential crisis. It's a necessary for humanity. If you really believe that, then you might believe that it is within your moral right to cheat. So half of America is feeling this way, and I think that we should step aside and allow them to do anything and everything they need to do in order to get to the point where they say, nope, okay, I guess he lost, and we need to move forward. I think we should step aside and allow that. Now, if you try to stop that process from happening, it only adds fuel to the flames of these conspiracy theories, right? I mean, which I don't even know if they are conspiracy theories, because I also don't put anything past I don't put anything past anybody when it comes to politics. I think people play really dirty, and I think there is a possibility. Sure, I think there is a possibility that they maybe did something sinister. I think that's possible, and I'm wanting to, and why not look into it to ensure that that didn't happen? There's no reason not to. And then people say, well, that is just such a dangerous thing to even say or to suggest. No, it isn't. It isn't. It is, again, American. It's American to suggest and wonder and to say, let's look, let's double check. So, I understand the sentiment for sure. And I understand the need to double check. And I understand that it's going to be very difficult for half of America to feel like there were anything but cheated when we all sat through what happened for the last 4 years. But ultimately, in the end, I just want to make the point that these challenges in court will hopefully result in a stronger, strengthened election. And that shouldn't be a partisan issue. We should all champion that. We should all welcome that. And we should all say, hey, look, while we're at it, let's do some other fixing of our election to ensure that it is safe, that it is fair, and that it is accessible for everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you. Please subscribe to the channel. Also, if you'd like to sign up for my email newsletter, it's the way that I'm going to be able to contact you just in case. You never know these days with the censorship, the increased censorship that's going on. Sign up for that email newsletter. You're not going to receive anything right now. I haven't really started doing a newsletter. I'm just kind of collecting the emails in case something happens to the show. But I do plan on getting that newsletter out to you on a fairly regular basis to keep you up to date with what is going on, not only with the show, but just in America. So thank you, and around the world, to be fair. A lot of foreign policy stuff, and there's a lot of foreign policy to be keeping our eye on with the Joe Biden administration. He's putting in a lot of warmongers. I'm going to be getting to that and keeping you informed on that. Thank you guys so much for watching.